Hey, this is Matthew with BI Polar, and in today's video we're going to take a look at one aspect of the relationship between business and IT stakeholders in a successful data culture. Let's take a look. All right, in our kickoff video for this series, we took a look at a definition of a data culture and emphasized the importance of two things. First of all, a culture is defined by the actions that it promotes and encourages, and the actions that it discourages or punishes. This is cultures in general, not just data cultures. And a data culture, the goals of the culture encourage and promote data-driven decisions by more stakeholders at more parts of the organization. Now, with this as the starting point, and building on top of the importance of executive sponsorship and the last video looking at the history of business intelligence and the evolution of business intelligence tools, let's take a look at some of the ways that organizations can structure and be successful with self-service BI in a managed context. Now, let's look first of all at a slide that I have shamelessly stolen from the Power BI adoption framework. Look in the links below for a link to all of the slides and the other adoption framework content. But first of all, let's look at the three different standard delivery approaches that organizations can take when using Power BI. And also, let me mention that even though this content is taken from the Power BI adoption framework, and even though my focus is on Power BI as a self-service business intelligence tool, these general topics are relevant regardless of the tool you're using, whether it's Power BI, Excel, some other third-party tool, really doesn't matter. A lot of these concepts are going to apply. It's the details that will be different based on the technology that you're using. So if we look at this, there are really three different buckets of approaches, or three different categories of approaches that an organization can take when adopting business intelligence. And we're going to look at the outside and then look at the middle. Let's begin by looking at that business-led self-service IT. Now, this is what the most recent video on the history of business intelligence talked about as being the more recent set of problems, or the most recent approaches with their own unique problems. And this is essentially a situation where business groups and business stakeholders have said, I am going to work with the data of my choice, and I am going to make data-driven decisions using business data and self-service BI tools, and business owns everything end to end. There is minimal IT involvement. Very often IT will be involved as the owners of some of the upstream systems and maybe technical support when people run into problems using a tool or using a technology. But in this approach, the applications and their success is driven solely or primarily by business stakeholders. Even though IT will be involved from time to time, IT does not have an ownership stake. Now let's look at the other extreme. Let's look at the right side of this slide. In a corporate BI scenario, this is in many ways what we had before self-service BI tools were available. In this world, or in this approach, the IT organization, typically a business intelligence or data and analytics org, they own the tools, they own the data, and they're responsible for the development, delivery, evolution, maintenance, and support of the BI applications, as well as the underlying platforms and the upstream data sources. This is, I hesitate to say this, but this is old school, right? This is what we had as the tools were evolving and before there was an opportunity for business users to do any of this work themselves. But I also want to emphasize that in my day job, I work with global enterprise organizations that take this approach using Power BI. So it is possible to adopt Power BI and more self-service friendly tools, but still say IT owns the data, IT owns the tools, and IT does the BI development work. This is a valid, if limiting, way of approaching business intelligence. Now, if you think back to our history video, you know that each one of these approaches has its own set of challenges. So let's look at this middle approach. Let's look at managed self-service BI, where the IT organization and the business organization, or users and groups from each side of this divide, collaborate and own the BI platform and BI solutions together. Now, this managed approach in many ways is the best of both worlds, and in my opinion, this is the North Star to which organizations working to adopt a data culture that they need to strive towards. It's possible to be successful taking either of the extreme but limiting approaches, but each one of them has significant hurdles and significant limitations that are difficult to overcome without this natural evolution toward a managed approach. And in this managed approach, the roles and responsibilities align with the strengths and the interests of each of those partners in the relationship. Typically, the IT group will own the tools, the platforms, the support. They make sure that everything is running and that people have the tools that they need to do the jobs that they need to do. And on the business side, business owns the data, or at least the use of the data. There's lots of ways to get into the details there for what data ownership actually means. But for the business side, the business users, the analysts who are driving the data decisions to do their jobs better or to enable their peers inside a business group to do better, those users are working with the data that is provided by a central IT and BI team, so that that BI team in IT is giving them the tools, the support, and the trusted, curated data sources that are reliable and up. You know, they're up and running. And at the same time, the business group, they're able to work in an agile way, not needing to go to IT all the time, asking for help or asking for support. And those business groups are often empowered to work with their own less supported or unsupported data sources as part of their tactical needs as their business requirements evolve and change over time. And of course, nothing is static. So if you look down at the bottom of the slide, you will see the truth that over time, the roles and responsibilities either for the organization or for individual applications will evolve like a pendulum swinging back and forth. So it's not uncommon to see an organization to say, we have locked things down too far. At the beginning of the new fiscal year, or as we're kicking off the new project, we're going to give business users the ability to do things that they didn't previously do, often because we've noticed them straying outside of the established or agreed upon boundaries over the past period. Or perhaps they say, we're playing too free and too loose with data sources that we need to have more tightly controlled. Moving forward, instead of allowing business to do things that they've done in the past, we're going to say that this application or this data source or this business domain is now more managed and more controlled with less self-service freedom. This is natural and appropriate. It's very difficult to get things right the first time, so the willingness and the ability to grow and refine over time is really key to that long-term success. And speaking of long-term success, let's take a look at a specific example from Microsoft. This graphic that I'm sharing is one of these standard graphics that my team shares during executive briefings with customers under NDA when they come to Microsoft to learn about successful Power BI adoption. And this is a high-level, three-stage view of the journey that Microsoft's finance organization has taken over the past 10 or 15 years. So Microsoft has always had a corporate culture enabling individuals and empowering and encouraging individuals to pursue their own success and their own ownership. So I don't want to say cowboy culture, but if you were to say it, I probably wouldn't argue. And this unmanaged self-service approach, back in the day largely driven through Excel, like going against various data sources and using Excel or early versions of Power BI to do this work, this resulted in a lot of inconsistency, a lot of inconsistent results or duplicate work, a lot of effort in many different silos of applications. And what Microsoft has found is something that we describe as discipline at the core and flexibility at the edge. And if you've come to an executive briefing at Microsoft, you've probably heard me or a member of my team say this to you when waving our hands at this slide or a slide like it before we jump into the details. But this is really the key. There is some data that you need to manage effectively and consistently for compliance, for business continuation. There's lots of reasons. There's some things that you don't mess around with. It needs to be controlled. But the majority of things, you need to enable flexibility because business needs that agility. They need to be responsive. And this is what allows IT to focus on the things that IT cares about, and it allows business to do the things that they need to do without being blocked. In our next video, we're going to take a look at this relationship between BI and IT and flexibility and and discipline and flexibility from a slightly different perspective. So I hope you'll join me. I hope this is worth the wait. We'll see you next time.